Happy Pride, everyone. Pride celebrations offer us the opportunity to not only celebrate the LGBTQ community's beauty, diversity, and successes, but also a time to reflect on how we as members of the greater community can improve the lives of our LGBTQ children and family members. I'm incredibly excited to see young members of the LGBTQ community embracing their full being at younger and younger ages. I'm inspired by their courage, even when they don't receive support. I'm grateful for the awesome parents who validate their gay children and teach their straight children to respect all people. I myself didn't come out until the late age of 29, mostly because I couldn't accept myself. Self-acceptance is a journey, and a book that helped me along that path is The Velvet Rage by Alan Downs. As our nation comes to terms with racial inequity, the term of white privilege has entered our lexicon. This is the idea that non-whites deal with implicit bias and outright discrimination, which white Americans are not subjected to. A component of white privilege is free mental bandwidth, not worrying if you're in the wrong neighborhood, if your son will come home, if your reservation was really lost. Alan Downs in his book proposes a similar theory in that gay children are often validated for who they pretend to be rather than who they actually are, while straight children receive validation for their actual identity. Because of this, many of us grow up believing that we are somehow flawed. This leads some LGBTQ children to try to pass as straight, some to fall into destructive patterns, and others to overcompensate and try to achieve an ideal of perfection that can never be realized. Of course, no theory can encompass the wide range of human experience. Some have accused Alan Downs of saying that being gay is an issue, but what he's really claiming is that the invalidation our LGBTQ children receive is a real problem, and the self-acceptance is its solution. When I first sat down to tell my mother that I was gay, she responded with love and acceptance, but also with fear. Fear of mistreatment, fear of a hard or lonely life, and at the height of the AIDS crisis, fear of HIV. Fears that take up mental energy. If we come to understand the struggles and fears of our LGBTQ, non-binary, and gender-fluid children, and validate and accept every part of their being, just as Namu Amida Butsu accepts us for who we are, they then can do the same, and the cycle of dukkha can be bypassed. But this doesn't happen on its own. It takes education, outreach, support, and allies. Things we all in the LGBTQ community have all found here at the Buddhist Church of San Francisco, and for which we are very grateful and take pride. So thank you, BCSF, and happy Pride. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Hi, thank you for joining us and happy Pride. My name is Adia Kimizuka Leon, and today I would like to talk to you about representation of LGBTQ+ characters in the media. In the last decade, we have experienced more and more media representation of LGBTQ+ characters, either in shows, movies, and even in Broadway. There have been multiple musicals and TV shows that open the door to get to know the journey that the LGBTQ community faces when we come out and the challenges we have to overcome to be true to ourselves. The advent of new streaming platforms are interested in bringing new, fresh stories that represent the diversity of our society in a more authentic way. They definitely have been doing a lot of good work regarding representation. Representation in the media is critical for our society, especially nowadays. Everybody wants to watch a movie or a show where they can identify and connect to the main character, or at least to one of the characters. All of us want to feel that happy stories or even everyday stories that happen to us can be shown on the screen. And that representation is important because we as human beings care about how we are seen by others, and it's an important way we learn to see ourselves. Accurate representation of the LGBTQ+ community in the media is critical, especially for young people, and even more so for transgender people. Throughout history, transgender characters in the media have been portrayed poorly and negatively. Trans characters have been brought to screen as a joke or the motive for a punchline very often. They are ridiculous characters who can be taken seriously, dehumanized from silent movies to contemporary comedy shows. On the serious side, trans characters have been represented as deceiving characters who have to reveal their biology to redeem themselves in the eyes of society. This overwhelmingly negative historical representation of trans people in the media affects trans people and especially trans youth, in how people see them, and more importantly, in shaping how they look at themselves. These portrayals of trans characters play a big role in trans people's self-worth and self-esteem. Watching those stories shows them that it's not a safe place for them to be who they are without paying a price. As a result, we encounter a great mental health crisis in our trans brothers and sisters, while the only thing they want is to be their true self. More recently, trans character stories are not fixated on a big reveal, but instead has shifted to their suffering and death at the end of the story. Although the current narratives try to show a more human side of it, the message is still wrong. Now, trans characters suffer through the whole story and die. There is no happy ending for them. The message being conveyed is that redemption is only possible by losing their lives or for being who they are. Although there is some truth to the challenges and suffering transgender people endure in our unforgiving society, this does not represent the universe of stories still wanting to be told. We need stories where trans characters have real lives, a partner, a family, good times and bad times. This is an important message that we need out in the world right now. That trans people can identify and connect to a character that live like everybody else, characters that struggle in life and keep living, stories where they are allowed and encouraged to have dreams, goals, and happiness in their lives. These stories are crucial in our modern world because they bring a positive message to our transgender sisters and brothers, our transgender children, our transgender parents. They will be able to see themselves as part of our society. They will see that we embrace them and support them, that we see and recognize their struggles in their lives, but also their rights and motivations to be who they are. I would like to close this message with a passage from former BCA Bishop, Reverend Kodo Umezu. I can hear Shinran Shonin saying that all people are equal in the eyes of the Buddha. Discrimination comes from our defiled human minds. We live our lives relying on our unenlightened minds, but Shinran has told us how truly precious we are all in the eyes of the Buddha. He's urging us to live our lives as brothers and sisters regardless of differences. Let us humbly turn to the caring call from the Buddha's true and real of equality. Let us live our lives respecting and caring for each other on a journey to the realm known as the Pure Land. Namo Amida Butsu.
Please join me in Gasho as I read the words of Shinran Shonin from Notes on the Inscriptions on Sacred Scrolls. Realize that great love and compassion tirelessly and constantly protects this self. This is the blessing of being grasped, never to be abandoned. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. I greatly appreciate these words of Shinran Shonin, especially today, the day of our LGBTQ service here at the Buddhist Church of San Francisco on June 20th, 2021. It's all about love. That's what it all boils down to. It boils down to this great love and compassion that Shinran is speaking of. I'd like to take a trip down memory lane. Let's go back to 1994, 27 years ago. And some of you may recall that there was a great controversy going on back then. The Japanese American Citizen League was considering endorsing and supporting same-sex marriage. And this was controversial back then because not that many people supported same-sex marriage. According to the Gallup polls, 27% supported it, but there was a huge percentage that was against it. And things are changed. In the most recent Gallup polls that I could find, approval is up to 67%. But back then, this was a very controversial issue. And so before this controversy started, Gary and I got married. It was just only a few months before. And so we were approached and we were asked, could we put a face and a voice to the issue? And so we agreed to do so. We made a presentation at a JACL meeting, and I was interviewed by the Hokube Mainichi, and here I am looking much younger. And I was interviewed along with a woman named Leah Shigemura, who was also in a committed same-sex relationship. We were also interviewed on KALW. It was an interview, live interview, and we also took phone calls from the radio audience. So that was a little stressful to be taking phone calls. And one of the phone calls I had to manage was from someone from another religion who was not in agreement with us. But I think we had a very civil and productive conversation. But it was a stressful time, and to be quite honest, at the time I did not believe that same-sex marriage would ever be approved or legalized in my lifetime. I knew it was going to happen, but I thought it was going to take place way in the future. And so I was very thrilled and excited and happy when the JACL voted to support and endorse same-sex marriage. And in 2008, when the state of California legalized it, that was a very happy time. And also in 2015, when the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage throughout the land, that was a very happy time, very joyous time. So I'm grateful for the support that the JACL gave us, and I'm grateful for the support that we continue to receive from the Buddhist Church of San Francisco, and also from the Japanese American community. Indeed, a community that knows firsthand what it is like to be discriminated against and mistreated. These are communities that are coming together to do the right thing. So going back to the words of Shinran, realize that great love and compassion tirelessly and constantly protects this self. This great love and compassion that Shinran speaks of cannot be held down. It is alive, it moves. And the acceptance of loving relationships, regardless of gender, is evidence of this movement. It's a movement toward equality and a movement toward acceptance of all people, of all beings, just as they are. And it's a movement toward the Pure Land. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Boots, Namo Amida Boots, Namo Amida Boots. Thank you.
My name is John Bansavich, and I was born 59 years ago in Hartford, Connecticut. I'm the fifth of 6 children. We were raised Catholic, and I received a public school education and attended a Catholic high school and university. I realized that I was gay when I was 8 or 9 years old. I don't remember being overly concerned with this discovery, but I was not happy about having to keep it secret for another 10 years. By the time I entered high school, I was being verbally abused for being perceived as different. I came out to my family when I was 17 and a senior in high school. It was liberating to finally be honest about being gay. I had just turned 31 when I met Matthew Stimson. It was love at first sight. We shared many interests, and he introduced me to the Buddhist Church of San Francisco shortly after we met in May of 1993. Matthew's knowledge, practice, and enthusiasm for Buddhism was infectious. We began attending services together every Sunday. I remember feeling a little shy at first when we would join members in the social hall after service, but it wasn't long before I felt welcomed by many of the regular members, including Midori Utsuki, Flo Nakamura, Chiz Kakiuchi, Jackie Wong, Jack Jariki, and many others. The temple was a welcoming place to me and has continued to be a warm and caring place to this day. Matthew and I didn't outwardly discuss what it was like to be Buddhist and gay, but we enjoyed being part of the community and participating in many of the Jodo Shinshu holidays and traditions. For instance, Matthew's creative contributions to Hanamatsuri services, especially the giant floating elephant, and the many Ginza Bazaar festivals and Obon dancing and practice sessions. Participating in the chicken bento fundraisers, choir recitals and performances, and the many regular interactions we had with a caring Sangha. Matthew and I celebrated our love for one another in August of 2000. Reverend Laverne Sasaki agreed to officiate our relationship blessing ceremony, and we invited our friends and church members to attend. It was a wonderful ceremony, and we enjoyed a meal together at Takata Restaurant in Japantown that evening. We later celebrated our togetherness during our first trip to Japan that October, visiting the home temple along with other memorable places. Over the past 20 plus years, Matthew and I have seen the temple grow in the number of gay and lesbian practitioners. In 2013, BCSF participated in the San Francisco LGBTQ Pride Parade. What a remarkable day and event that was, and so many of the members showed up in support. I remember feeling so happy and proud that our special place was part of the community. The temple continued to participate in many pride parades the following years. There were so many people to thank for organizing BCSF's participation. Matt and I were legally married in 2019, 19 years after our first ceremony at the temple. This time we were united at City Hall in San Francisco. It was a very intimate and special ceremony. Sangha is like a family. They are always glad to see you, and you never feel alone.
Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu。はい。LGBTQ グループより日本語のメッセージです。今回の法要に参加された方の中には、当事者の方もいれば、ご家族、ご友人の方もいらっしゃるかと思います。で、その当事者においても、クローゼットであったり、オープンであったり、ご家族によってはサポート体制がしっかり整っている家庭もあれば、もう絶縁状態というところもあるかと思います。もうオープンな方はね、どんどんオープンにしていただいて、それを周りに社会に見せることによって、社会を変えていく力を持っています。もう、どんどんやっちゃってください。もう人生謳歌してね、こう、わーって楽しんでください。それがね、人のためになります。で、さらには、家族のサポート体制が整っている方。その方は、今、助けの求め方がわからない。思い悩んでいる。といった、そういったご家庭のね、モデルになることができますので、どんどんその輪を広げていっていただきたいと思います。一方で、そのクローゼットで思い悩んでいる。自分の身の危険を感じて、そのクローゼットでいざるを得ない。もしくは、その自分のジェンダーの表現であったり、性的指向にもう死ぬほど思い悩んでいる。もしくはご家族の方で絶縁状態になってしまっていて困っている。どうしたらいいかわからない。という方にメッセージを送りたいと思います。必ず助けを求めてください。もう思い詰めるのは一人じゃなくていいと思います。そしてその助けを求める過程において出会った人々を必ず大切にしてください。助けを求めることもできない人は居場所を変えてみるのも一つの手かもしれません。仏教の教えの中で苦しみを除くということに対してね、 お釈迦様が口酸っぱく言っているのは、もうそういう人たちのね、差別と偏見に満ち溢れた人たちと付き合うと自分もそういう風になっていきますよ。だからそういう人たちとは距離を置きなさい。なぜなら、自分が傷つかなくて済むし、その人に自分を傷つけさせることがなくなるという、そういった双方によってね、メリットがありますよ。ということを口酸っぱくお釈迦様は言っています。あとは、その中で、困難な中でですね、もうどうしよう、もう本当ダメかもしれないというふうにずっと停滞するのではなくて、そこからどうやったらじゃあ、この状況を自分から変えていくことができるのか。自分が変わることでどういう変化をもたらすかなと、そういった方向に目を向けるようにしてください。そのありとあらゆるつながりの中で生きているということを忘れずに、目に見えない人々のつながり、または目に見えない命のつながりというものに支えられて生きている、生かされているということを必ず思い返してください。私もゲイで HIV で仏教徒です。で、さらに言えば日本人で英語があんまうまくありません。ね、そんな中でも人々に支えられてなんとか生き延びてきました。あなたは一人じゃありません。どうか周りに支えられて生きている、周りに支えられて生きていくことができる、そういった希望を胸に今日も一日お過ごしいただければと思います。ありがとうございました。ナマンダムツ、ナマンダムツ、ナマンダムツ、ナマンダムツ、ナマンダムツ。
Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namandos, Namandos. Today I attended a socially distanced and masked interfaith rally at Portsmouth Square in San Francisco's Chinatown. It was called Solidarity in the Struggle, from Vincent Chin to George Floyd, an affirmation of BLM, Black Lives Matter, and API, Asian Pacific Islander solidarity. The Reverend Jesse Jackson was the guest speaker, and it marked the 39th anniversary of when he was here in Portsmouth Square protesting the savage killing of Vincent Chin, who was beaten to death in a racially motivated attack by two white men on June 23rd, 1982. I attended today because our Bodhisattva teachings explain that our liberation will be collective, or else it won't be liberation. For me, Buddhism invites us to apply the insights from our Dharma teachings to situations of social, environmental, and economic suffering and injustice. So while today we recognize LGBTQ plus struggles and celebrate our victories, we cannot forget those who don't have an annual service supporting them. Caroline Cantillo wrote a piece a while back exploring the reality of identity. And she said, "My gay identity is important, but so too is willing to sit still and look at connections and relationships. Otherwise, I might fall into an acquiring mindset, the kind that wants rights for myself, but is willing to exclude others from the struggle if I feel like they might jeopardize my chances. Maybe being of the LGBTIQ persuasion is a gift, sensitizing me to injustice and suffering, and moving me to lift up the ignored and forgotten." Close quote. Our Buddhist teaching speaks to our universal oneness, not sameness, but oneness. And we take refuge in this oneness, acknowledging our profound interdependence. I think Reverend William Brianna stated it beautifully. Our lives are interconnected. All beings are equally embraced by Amida Buddha. Everyone is included, everyone. As Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, our goal is to awaken to the spiritual truth of interdependency and equality. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namandots. Namandots, Namandots, Namandots. And now just a word about today's Gatha. Critical research has shown that family acceptance has a compelling impact on the well-being of our LGBTQ youth. Today, we are grateful to have with us an ally, BJ Soriano, and her son, Dustin Soriano, who's walked proudly with us in Pride Parades. And together they will be performing a Gatha that BJ co-wrote called Life in Harmony.